Dear friends, good morning and welcome to the 6th class of our Political Science 2, Pol 102 class. Dear friends, today we are going to talk about the decisions in politics, but it will not be about the way the decisions taken by the politicians. Instead, it will be about how do we consider, how do we analyze, how do we think about the ways that the politicians, the political leaders, make their decisions. So, it's actually about the ways thinking about how the political leaders make their decisions. In making any decision, we have 5 parts: input, alternatives, decision, process, and result. And as I told you, this week's class will be about analyzing the decisions: input, alternatives, decision, process, and result. Dear friends, one of the most significant models in analyzing political leaders' decisions is the rational actor model. Rational, what is rational? It's the opposite of it's irrational. So, the rational means economic, it actually also means logical. The economic man is supposed to decide in a rational way, and that's the starting point of the rational actor model. This model calculates the inputs and outcomes in the rational actor, the person, the political leaders whom we consider to be rational actor, calculates the inputs and outcomes, and he or she makes the decision. So, in following the rational actor model, we assume that the decision maker is rational and he or she does the following. First, he or she detects the quality of the problem. Second, he or she detects the priorities. Third, he or she analyzes the ways to reach the goals based on their effectiveness and requirements. And finally, he or she follows the way that is most likely to attain that goal. In the rational actor model, we consider the leaders as persons who are after much of joy and less of pain. For whom? For themselves, for their cabinet, for their associates, but for the electorate and for the nation as a whole. Much of joy, less of pain. So, they are trying to do the good things. We consider them as persons who are trying to do the good things for this sum up, for the total of the nation, voters, electorate. But do they all the times make the right choice? It's arguable. The decision made by the leader, maybe the party leader, maybe the minister, maybe the bureaucrat, maybe the manager, maybe the prime minister, president, general, whoever, they make decisions, yes. But how about their associates and advisors? They might not know the leader, for instance. Just imagine a prime minister. He or she does not know everything, all the political issues regarding the country. For instance, if the prime minister is an economist or if the prime minister is a doctor, he cannot know about the agricultural policies. So, he needs to have the advisors of some people who are experts of agriculture. So, here the advisors and experts also play a critical role in shaping the leader's decision. And from times to times, the advisors or the experts might give falsified information, they might give inadequate information, or they might make misleading calculations, and the decision might not be right. And of course, the leader himself or herself might also mislead himself or herself. So, the decisions are not free of mistakes, of course. Rational actor model, as I told you, the rational actor tries to make a rational choice, but the rational choice there is an agreement on the risk of the unpredictable outcomes. So, when you make a decision, you also bear in mind that that decision will bring you some risks. But not taking that decision also brings you some risks. So you try to be in an agreement with the relevant parties, the relevant people engaged in that decision making, that there is a risk there. And for instance, an example, which one is better, increasing taxes or reducing the health service expenditures? There are two options there, the one or the other, and the leader tries to make the decision between the two. But which one is true? Which one is more accurate? Which one is more rational? That's actually up to the leader and his or her advisors and the experts. Another model that we use in analyzing the political actors' decisions is the disjoint incrementalism. It actually foresees that the politicians, the political decision makers, try to make small steps for more daily and short-term problems. They do not try to take revolutionary, in quotation marks, and utopic decisions. Everything begins from zero, and how about the outcomes of the former decisions? There is something to consider there. And in the disjoint incrementalism, the decision makers try to avoid problems instead of solving problems. So if you are causing more problems by taking a decision, you try to avoid making that decision. And there is something that might give us the general logic of disjoint incrementalism. It says, just save the day, don't pay the Che. Who is the Che? He is the revolutionary leader of Cuba. So in that one, in the disjoint incrementalism, we believe that, we presume and assume that the political decision makers, they don't try to play the Che, but they try to avoid bigger problems and they try to solve smaller problems. Another model is the bureaucratic organization model. It's actually divided into two, so we might call them bureaucratic organization models. Graham Allison, a famous and important political scientist, is the father of that model, and he very accurately used that model in analyzing the American decision-making system during the Cuban crisis in early 1960s. And that model is composed of two levels of analysis. First, the organizational process model. In that model, there is the analysis of values, assumptions, behaviors, and internal dynamics of one body, for instance, a ministry. And in the bureaucratic organizational model, the analysis of intra-unit and inter-unit interests is the focal point. For instance, there might be different suggestions about the same problem, and they might be put forward by different departments within the state. For instance, in the Cuban crisis, the American army, the US Army, suggested war. They asked President to declare war on Cuba, but the diplomats suggested diplomacy. Let's use soft power and diplomatic pressures on Cuba and on Soviet Union. So you see, the diplomats are experts of diplomacy and the army is expert of the war. So you see two different suggestions from two different departments about the same problem. So that's bureaucratic politics model. And finally, the belief system model. In that model, dear friends, we analyze the ethical and political values followed by the decision makers. And based on their ethics and based on their values, we try to make comments, make judgments about the choices made by political leaders. A very simple example for that, Adolf Hitler was a racist leader and he actually hated Jews, and that's an explanation about one explanation about the genocide he committed against the Jews was the fact that he was racist and he actually hated Jews. So belief system model is something like that. Or another thing, a socialist prime minister might refuse to privatize the airport management in his country, and when you consider the fact that that leader is socialist, he or she is rather unlikely to privatize, the management of the state airport. So what does that mean? Not only the costs and benefits, but also the belief systems of the leaders are effective on the decision-making process. Dear friends, let's try to sum up. In making the decisions, there are 5 parts: input, alternatives, decision, process, and result. And in our political science approaches, we do not generate ways of making decisions. Instead, we generate ways of analyzing the decisions made by the political leaders. Of course, if any of you will be engaged in active politics in the future, you will be in the position to generate your decision-making skills, but currently we are just trying to analyze the decisions made by political actors. One model is the rational actor model, and in that model we consider the decision maker as an economic actor, as an economic man, calculating costs and benefits of the decision. In the disjoint incrementalism, we assume that the politicians, the political actors, political leaders are trying to solve small problems, and they try to avoid bigger problems, and they don't try to play the chair. In the bureaucratic organization model, we deal with intra-unit and inter-unit interactions in the decision-making process. And in the belief system model, we analyze the ideological background of the decision maker. Dear friends, thank you for listening to today's class. I'll be glad to meet you next week. Have a nice day.